If you are broke and spending money to look respected, you are not building power. You are financing your own weakness. Every unnecessary purchase is not just money leaving your account. It is freedom delayed, options destroyed, leverage sacrificed. A future version of you left trapped because the present version of you needed to feel important for 10 minutes. Most men do not waste money because they are stupid. They waste money because they are wounded. They buy the jacket because they want to feel seen. They buy the phone because they want to feel current. They buy the car upgrade because they want to feel higher in the hierarchy. They buy the night out because they want to escape the silence of being behind. And the brutal truth is this: when a man has no real power, he often buys symbols of power. And symbols are expensive. This is not only a money problem, it is a self-command problem. Psychologist Albert Bandura describes self-efficacy as the belief that you can act, endure, and produce results. One of the strongest sources of that belief is mastery experience. Repeated proof that you can do difficult things and survive them. Financial discipline is one of the first mastery experiences available to a man starting from zero. Because every dollar you refuse to waste becomes evidence. Evidence that you can govern yourself. Evidence that your impulses do not own you. Evidence that discomfort can pass without becoming a purchase. And a man who cannot govern himself will always be governed by someone else. This is why Oprah Winfrey is useful here. Not because she became famous. Fame is the wrong lesson. The useful lesson is ownership. She did not only become a face on television. She formed Harpo Productions in 1986, turning communication skill, audience trust, and media visibility into an asset she controlled. That is the move. Talent gets attention. Ownership creates leverage. Weak men buy attention. Strategic men build leverage. Research on compensatory consumption points to the same ugly pattern. When people feel threatened in status, identity, power, or belonging, they often spend to compensate psychologically. In plain language, a man feels small, so he buys something that makes him feel large. But nothing has changed. He still has no emergency fund, no high-income skill, no proof, no assets, no leverage, no escape route, only a receipt. So if I started from zero, there are 5 things I would never waste money on. Not because pleasure is evil, not because suffering is noble, but because when you are starting from zero, money is not entertainment. Money is oxygen. Money is distance from panic, distance from humiliation, distance from begging, distance from people who think they can control you because you need them. The question is not, can I afford this? That is the question consumers ask. The better question is this: does this purchase increase my freedom, my skill, my proof, my assets, or my leverage? If the answer is no, then it is not a purchase. It is a leak. And leaks destroy men quietly. Here is what you lose when you waste money at zero. You lose time because every dollar you waste must be earned again with hours of your life. You lose options because without cash reserves, every emergency becomes a crisis. You lose self-respect because deep down you know when you are spending to hide insecurity. You lose negotiation power because a man with no financial buffer must accept bad offers, bad jobs, bad deals, and bad treatment. And worst of all, you lose compound momentum. The money you wasted could have bought a course that produced skill, a tool that produced output, a reserve that bought time, a camera that built an audience, a website that sold a service, a quiet month of breathing room while you built something real, but instead it bought attention, and attention without ownership is a poor man's drug. 1. Never waste money on looking successful. The first thing I would never waste money on is looking successful. This is the most common trap for ambitious men with no foundation. They want the image before the infrastructure. They want the shoes, the watch, the clothes, the car, the apartment, the restaurants, the photos, the aesthetic. But image without assets is rented status. It gives you the feeling of elevation without the structure of elevation. That is dangerous because it tricks your nervous system. You look slightly better. People react slightly differently. You feel slightly more important. But underneath, nothing has changed. You are still dependent, still fragile, still one emergency away from panic, still selling time because you have not bought freedom. This is where most men lie to themselves. They call it confidence, but it is rented status. Here is the test. Would you still buy it if nobody saw it? Would you still want the watch if no one could recognize the brand? Would you still want the car upgrade if no one could react to it? Would you still want the outfit if no picture was taken? Would you still want the expensive night if nobody knew you were there? If the answer is no, you are not buying quality. You are buying witnesses. And when a man needs witnesses to feel powerful, he is not powerful yet. Machiavelli understood appearances. He knew perception mattered. But perception without force behind it becomes a burden. Appearance without power must be constantly defended. That is why fake status is expensive. You cannot buy it once. You must keep feeding it. You need the next outfit, the next upgrade, the next proof that you are not behind, the next signal that you are not invisible. But the strategic man does not ignore appearance forever. He simply refuses to buy appearance before foundation. First capital, then skill, then proof, then assets, then lifestyle. In that order. Break the order and you do not become successful. You become decorated weakness. A man starting from zero has no business trying to look like he has arrived. He has one job. Build the base so solidly that the image becomes a consequence, not a costume. Stop asking, how do I look successful? Ask, what am I building that will make success undeniable? That question cuts through vanity. It forces you to look at the real score. Not the outfit, not the phone, not the restaurant, not the photo. The real score is reserve, skill, proof, assets, leverage, discipline, health, and options. Everything else is theater. And theater is dangerous when you cannot afford the ticket. But image is only the loud leak. There is a quieter leak that destroys men even faster. The money they spend to escape how they feel. 2. Never waste money on emotional escapes. A weak man spends to avoid his own silence. That is why boredom is expensive, loneliness is expensive, insecurity is expensive, stress is expensive. When a man has no inner command, his emotions become salesmen. They sell him food he does not need, entertainment he cannot afford, nights out that weaken tomorrow, subscriptions he does not use, impulse purchases that give him a temporary identity. He calls it treating himself. But many times it is not a reward. It is anesthesia. This is where unsupported men must be careful. Because when you feel ignored, spending becomes a way to feel alive. When nobody claps, you buy stimulation. When nobody respects you, you buy symbols. When nobody understands you, you buy escape. When the future feels far away, you buy the present. But every emotional escape has a second price. The first price is money. The second price is momentum. You do not just lose the cash. You lose the identity of the man who was supposed to be building. A man tells himself, I deserve this because I work hard. Maybe he does work hard. But the question is not whether he deserves pleasure. The question is whether this pleasure makes him stronger tomorrow or weaker tomorrow. That is the line most men refuse to draw, because the moment they draw it, They can no longer hide behind emotion. If every stressful day becomes an excuse to spend, then stress owns your wallet. If every lonely night becomes a reason to escape, then loneliness owns your discipline. If every insecure moment becomes a purchase, then insecurity is not a feeling anymore. It is your financial advisor, and it will bankrupt you. If I started from zero, I would create one rule: never use money to numb a weakness that should be trained. If I feel lonely, I train. If I feel insecure, I build skill. If I feel angry, I produce. If I feel behind, I save. If I feel invisible, I create proof. This is practical psychology. You do not deny the emotion, you convert it. Emotion becomes action. Action becomes evidence. Evidence becomes self-respect. That is how a man stops being controlled by his internal weather. You are not relaxing if the purchase makes your future weaker. You are surrendering with better packaging. If you are serious about becoming harder to ignore, stop confusing watching with changing. You already know hard work is not enough, but your problem is execution, proof, and pressure. If you keep consuming without building, you will stay informed but unchanged. Inside Patreon, you get deeper frameworks and unfiltered breakdowns, so you can turn insight into execution. This is not for men who want comfort. It is for men who execute. The decision is yours. Now listen carefully. There is a third trap, and it is more dangerous because it does not look weak. It looks intelligent. It looks productive. It even looks disciplined. And that is why it fools ambitious men. 3. Never waste money on useless learning. Not all education is investment. Some education is procrastination with a receipt. This is one of the most dangerous traps for men who want to improve, because it allows weakness to wear the mask of discipline. They buy books. They buy courses. They buy programs. They buy masterminds. They collect notes. They save frameworks. They watch breakdowns. They underline sentences. They build folders full of information. But they never turn knowledge into market value. So they feel superior, but they remain broke. That is not learning. That is intellectual decoration. A man starting from zero cannot afford ornamental knowledge. He does not have the luxury of studying things that never become ability. Every dollar spent on learning must answer one question. What result will this help me produce? Will it help me sell? Will it help me write? Will it help me speak? Will it help me edit? Will it help me code? Will it help me negotiate? Will it help me design? Will it help me repair? Will it help me lead? Will it help me build an offer? Will it help me close clients? Will it help me create content? Will it help me improve health? Will it help me increase earning power? If not, it may be interesting. But interesting is not enough when you are fighting for freedom. A $20 book is not automatically an investment. It becomes an investment only when it changes your behavior. It becomes an investment when it improves your offer, your writing, your sales call, your body, your decision-making, or your ability to earn. A course is not automatically an investment. It becomes an investment only when you extract skill from it, apply the skill in reality, and produce evidence. A mentor is not automatically an investment. A mentor becomes useful only when you execute the instruction fast enough that feedback can sharpen you. Most men do not need more information. They need a harsher conversion rate. Input must become output. Output must become proof. Proof must become leverage. Leverage must become freedom. If the chain breaks, the learning was consumption. If I started from zero, I would only buy learning that connects to one of 4 outcomes: skill, income, proof, assets. Skill means I can do something better. Income means the skill can reach the market. Proof means I can show evidence. Assets mean the knowledge helps me build something that compounds. This is how you separate education from entertainment. Because many men are not learning to become powerful. They are learning to feel less guilty about not acting. They read about discipline so they can avoid being disciplined. They study business so they can avoid selling. They watch productivity content so they can avoid producing. They research fitness so they can avoid training. They collect strategy so they can avoid risk. And the mind loves this trick because it gives you the feeling of progress without the exposure of performance. But reality does not reward how much you know. Reality rewards what your knowledge can produce under pressure. Do not become a collector of information. Become a producer of evidence. Knowledge that does not change your behavior is entertainment. And entertainment should never be confused with power. But there is an even more humiliating form of waste. Spending money on people who do not invest in you. 4. Never waste money. Impressing people who do not invest in you. If you are spending money to impress people who would not help you build, you are paying tribute to the wrong kingdom. This is where many men lose themselves. They buy things for people who do not respect them. They pay for nights with people who do not support them. They upgrade their image for people who secretly want them to stay the same. They act generous before they are stable. They act successful before they are free. They act available to people who would disappear the moment they stopped being useful. They are not spending. They are begging in disguise. Begging for approval. Begging for status. Begging to be included. Begging to finally be seen. This is especially dangerous for the unsupported man, because when you grew up feeling dismissed, attention can feel like food. So you start paying for it. You pay with money. You pay with time. You pay with emotional labor. You pay with your focus. You pay with your future. And people will let you. The world rarely stops a man from weakening himself if it benefits from his weakness. This is why you must be cold, not cruel. Cold. You must ask better questions. Who actually invests in my future? Who respects my discipline? Who becomes stronger when I become stronger? Who drains me while pretending to love me? Who only appears when I am useful, entertaining, or generous? Who celebrates my weakness because it keeps me accessible? Who becomes uncomfortable when I become focused? These questions save money, but more importantly, they save dignity. Because a man who spends to be liked is easy to control. All someone has to do is withdraw approval, and he starts performing again. He buys another drink. He covers another bill. He upgrades another symbol. He says yes when he should say no. He becomes the sponsor of his own disrespect. If I started from zero, I would not spend to be liked. I would spend to become capable. I would spend on tools, training, health, skill, distribution, proof, systems, assets. Not on approval. Approval is cheap when you are useful, but it is expensive when you are needy. A man with value does not need to buy his place in every room. He becomes selective about rooms. He understands that not every audience deserves access. Not every friendship deserves funding. Not every family expectation deserves obedience. Not every social circle deserves sacrifice. There are people who only like you when you are convenient, wounded, entertaining, or beneath them. And if you spend money to remain acceptable to them, you have chosen captivity with better lighting. Stop trying to buy a place in rooms that do not respect your future. Build until you become the room. If you are serious about building real leverage, stop confusing support with spectators. You already know not everyone around you wants your rise, but your problem is that you still spend energy proving yourself to people who do not invest in you. If you keep funding approval, you will stay visible to the wrong people and invisible to your own future. Inside Patreon, you get deeper frameworks, sharper breakdowns, and unfiltered strategic lessons, so you can turn abandonment into execution and execution into proof. This is not for men who want applause. It is for men who want power over their own direction. The decision is yours. And now we reach the deepest rule. The rule that separates men who escape zero from men who keep returning to it. 5. Never waste money that should become. Escape capital. Your first dollars are not for lifestyle. Your first dollars are soldiers. And if you send them to die for comfort, do not complain when you have no army left for freedom. Escape capital is the money that gives you room to move. Not forever. Just enough. Enough to leave a bad job. Enough to survive a slow month. Enough to buy training. Enough to build a small offer. Enough to take a calculated risk. Enough to say no when the wrong person tries to control you. This money is sacred, because without it, you are easy to pressure. A man with no savings must obey urgency. He cannot negotiate well because he needs the deal. He cannot leave quickly because he needs the paycheck. He cannot build patiently because he needs instant reward. He cannot think clearly because survival is screaming. So he makes short-term decisions. Then those short-term decisions create long-term weakness. This is how poverty becomes psychological, not just financial. It narrows your time horizon. It forces you into reaction. It makes every opportunity feel like a threat because you do not have enough room to breathe. That is why escape capital matters. It changes the mind before it changes the lifestyle. It gives you calm, not luxury. Calm. And calm is strategic. A calm man can wait. A calm man can choose. A calm man can refuse. A calm man can build without selling his soul to the first opportunity. If I started from zero, my first financial goal would not be to look rich. It would be to become harder to control. That means building a reserve, then investing in skill, then building proof, then creating assets, then only upgrading lifestyle when the foundation can carry it. This is the sequence. Break the sequence and you return to zero wearing better clothes. Most men break the sequence because they cannot tolerate being unseen while building. They want evidence before they have earned it. They want the feeling of arrival before the structure exists. They want respect now, even if it costs them freedom later. But the world does not care what you were trying to signal. It only cares what you can sustain. If your image requires constant spending, it is not power. It is maintenance. If your confidence requires constant stimulation, it is not confidence. It is dependence. If your education never creates output, it is not wisdom. It is decoration. If your generosity makes you unstable, it is not nobility. It is self-betrayal. If your money never becomes options, it is not money. It is fuel burned for temporary emotion. The broke man spends to feel free. The strategic man saves and invests until he actually is. Money is not for proving you matter. Money is for buying the power to move. So if I started from zero, these are the 5 things I would never waste money on. Looking successful. Emotional escapes. Useless learning. Impressing people who do not invest in me. And anything that should have become escape capital. Because the first stage of power is not dominance over others. It is dominance over your own leaks. Your money leaks show your identity leaks. If you spend for approval, you are still owned by opinion. If you spend for escape, you are still owned by emotion. If you spend for image, you are still owned by status anxiety. If you spend without strategy, you are still owned by impulse. And a man owned by impulse cannot build freedom. Starting from zero is not the problem. Starting from zero while trying to look like you already made it, that is the problem. You do not need to look powerful. You need to become difficult to control. You need capital that buys options, skills that raise your value, proof that changes your social price, assets that compound beyond your labor, discipline that protects the foundation. That is how a man with nothing begins to move differently. Quietly, coldly, strategically, not begging to be seen, not performing for people who would not protect his future, not burning his first dollars for 10 minutes of emotional relief. He becomes the kind of man who can sit in silence without needing to purchase identity. He becomes the kind of man who can be underestimated without reacting. He becomes the kind of man who can delay pleasure because he is building something larger than comfort. And that is when the game changes. Because the moment you stop spending to feel powerful, you can finally begin building power. No support, no network, no excuses. Build anyway.